Adventures waiting in every nook. Dragons, quills, and stories are told. Let your imagination unfold. Oh, stories unfold, dreams take flight. Join the journey, day or night. With David Gailey, set your mind free. Discover the magic of creativity.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Something Interesting podcast, recorded on October 21st, 2024. This is the show where we dive into the world of writing and talk about works in progress and writing projects, interesting topics that may or may not be related to writing tips and advice, generally not my own, but I'll share my own thoughts. And something funny or humorous, which lately seems to be connected more and more to the wacky world of AI. When it comes to writing projects, this week I completed the third and now final draft of my 1,500-word short story project for the SNHU Fall Fiction Writing Contest and submitted my entry. I've also posted it on my website for anyone interested in checking it out. Writing a story entirely in dialogue was a challenging yet rewarding experience. Feedback varied depending on who you asked. When I initially submitted my work to the Writing Center through the university, the feedback that I got was that writing a dialogue-only piece was very ambitious, which they admired. However, they felt that one of the main characters needed more character development. And so I focused my efforts on doing that. Later feedback from the Writing Center said that one person said that they felt that the piece was exemplary and should be submitted. And another said that they really enjoyed the story. However, they felt that the dialogue-only format was a risk, given that I would be competing against more traditional short stories that are written with traditional plot setting and character development. I knew it was a risk going in, but I wanted my story to stand out, and I do believe that I've accomplished that. My sister wished that the story kept going at the end, which is the type of response that you want to hear. And in that regard, several of my trusted friends had expressed similar sentiments, namely that this would make for a great longer story. However, with time running out and me wanting to move on to other projects, I've wrapped up the final draft for submission. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're interested, feel free to go to my website, davidjgailey.com, and check it out. Let me know. I definitely would love to hear from you. Something interesting. While watching sports this week, I stumbled upon a compelling Honda commercial narrated by John Cena. The cinematic short spotlights the inspiring journeys of the late racer Ayrton Senna and FIA F1 world champion Max Verstappen. The text is a reverse poem, one that conveys opposite meanings when read backward. I am including a link to the commercial in the show notes for anyone who would like to check it out for themselves. However, I am also displaying the poem for anyone watching the podcast. The poem reads, "You won't remember my name. This is the last time you will see me at the top. My doubts will destroy my dreams. The more I seem to learn, the more I seem to lose. I want to carry on, but not today. This is the point I give up. But not today. I want to carry on. The more I seem to lose, the more I seem to learn. My doubts will destroy my dreams. You will see me at the top. This is the last time you won't remember my name." I found this so powerful. When I saw it, I got chills, and I decided to take on the challenge of writing a reverse poem myself, something I've never done before. I did a little research and discovered that there's a method to crafting them, but I thought perhaps we would dive into that on the next episode. This will be one of the projects that I'm working on this week, along with finishing the first chapter of one of my longer works in progress that I've been putting off. What about you? Have you ever written a reverse poem or tackled a unique writing challenge? I'd love to hear more about what you're doing to challenge yourselves and your own unique experiences with this particular format. Writing tips. I am wondering if any of you are familiar or have ever heard of the term defamiliarization. This is a literary technique that presents familiar concepts in unfamiliar ways to make readers see them differently. The phrase, or the term rather, was coined by Victor Shklovsky in 1917, and defamiliarization aims to disrupt habitual perceptions and renew our awareness of the world. And let me give you some examples because I think it will become more clear what this means when you hear the examples. So instead of describing a light bulb as a light bulb, you might describe it as a tiny sun imprisoned in a glass orb. Or instead of referring to the sky in the traditional sense, you might describe the sky as a vast ocean hung upside down. It's basically you're using terminology that you normally wouldn't use when describing the sky, and associating it with that object and in an unfamiliar way. And when the reader sees it, it kind of stands out, and it's like whoa, and it's like visceral. There's a great example of this that's much better than these the two that I just shared with you. Totally a real world example by a writer named Alyssa Wong. She is brilliant. She's a master, and she's written a short story called Hungry Daughters of Starving Mothers. There will be a link in the show notes. Don't worry. This is a short story horror fiction that is simply brilliant. So here's the defamiliarization sentence that I chose from this story to give you an example. She says in the story, or a quote from the story, "I can taste the thoughts of the men I kill. They're greasy, bitter things like old coins sucked smooth." So describing thoughts as greasy, bitter things like old coins sucked smooth, it creates a visual. It disrupts your normal perceptions of that, and it really just kind of draws you into the story. So defamiliarization is something that I'm trying to do in my stories, because when I read Alyssa Wong's Hungry Daughters of Starving Mothers, and I see the effect that it has on me, and I want to have that sort of effect on my readers in a way. And so that's something that I'm working on. That's called defamiliarization. So that's the writing tip for this week. Now, something funny. AI is in full swing, as I mentioned last time. And I've been using AI to generate images for my works and blog posts and so on. And I asked Gemini to, with having completed my short story for the writing contest, I posted it online, and I wanted an image to go along with it. In the short story, there are 3 characters. There's a knight who comes back to his hometown. There's an older woman who greets him when he gets there, and then there's a young teenage girl who's 14 years old named Mary. And I asked Gemini to create an image of these 3 characters. And Mary has fiery red hair. The knight is probably, in his 30s or 40s. And the older woman is probably, in her 60s or 70s. And so I was telling Gemini I would like an image of these 3 people. And I was going into some length to be very specific so that the image would match. But Gemini has these guardrails built in where if you use the word child, if you use the word teen, if you use the word anything like that, it just bombs out and says, I'm sorry, but my terms of use, I can't, create photorealistic images of children. It's actually just ridiculous. I mean, in one sense, because this is totally, there's nothing inappropriate going on here, and why can't we just, generate this image? And so I kept having to remove terms from the prompt. So instead of saying a 14-year-old girl with fiery red hair, the prompt just said a girl with fiery red hair. And then Gemini still bombed out. And so then I came back with a woman with fiery red hair. And then this is what it generated. So if you're not watching, it generated, it was like Gemini just was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make sure that this is not a child. And so it generated a woman, a much, much older woman with fiery red hair. And then on top of that, the knight looks ridiculous. He's just something uncanny valley about his expression that's just very disturbing. And I just thought that was hilarious. And that is the humorous section for the show this week. And that's all I've got this week. If you like the word, I'm just starting out. If you like the podcast, leave a review on your wherever you're listening to the podcast from. And if you really want to support the podcast, quick subscribe or follow so that you don't miss an episode whenever it comes out. I'm your host, David Gailey. Until next time, stay inspired and keep writing.
Open the pages, take a look. Adventures waiting in every nook. Dragons, quills, and stories untold. Let your imagination unfold. Oh, stories unfold, dreams take flight. Join the journey, day or night. With David Gailey, set your mind free. Discover the magic of creativity.